Hello and welcome to the State of the Euros here on A State of Mind. 2 games, 14 goals, underdog comebacks, crossbars, freak own goals, scored penalties, missed penalties, great commentary, loud fans, and the shock elimination of the world champions. It may just be the greatest day of knockout football there's ever been, and we're here to unpack it all. I'm Seán McGill, and joining me, first of all, is Energy Sports' Struan Garvey. Energy? That's not your name. Your name's Struan. Struan, how are you?
I'm very good. What a night of football that was last night.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I'm also joined by host of Soccer Supernova here on A State of Mind. It's Amy Canavan. Amy, how are you?
Doing great, yeah. As Struan says, it's quite a Monday for football, wasn't it? I don't think I've had a Monday that exciting for knockout football for a long time, if ever. So it's a great one that we're going to get to dissect here.
I've not just had that good a Monday, not in terms of football, just a Monday that is that good.
Not fair, isn't it?
I think it felt like the first time post-pandemic where football has just been absolutely amazing. And there's been sort of moments of that throughout this tournament, but sort of for an overall day, it kind of seems like a thing that it makes you forget the stuff that's been going on or that is currently going on in the world. It was just, and that's what football's for, isn't it? A little bit of escapism. What a day it was. And we've got to start by talking about the fact that, like I said there, the champions of the world are out. A thrilling 3-0 draw in Bucharest between France and Switzerland, of course, went to penalties, and Kylian Mbappe missed the final spot kick to send the Swiss through to the first quarter-final since 1958, and 1954, sorry, and the first time they've won a knockout game at a major tournament since 1938. Struan, I'll start with you. And Switzerland deserve praise, and we'll definitely do that. But if we're sort of going through this game and we look at that Haris Seferovic opener, it's a pretty weak defending from that France side, and Clément Longley was the one at fault. And we'll talk about the other game later on as well. But when you've got a player like Amanat Laporte, who's been shunned by this France side, and Clément Longley, who's never really performed for Barcelona, it throws a lot of doubt defensively over this France team.
Yeah, I wasn't really impressed with Longley at all this past season for Barcelona, and I think last night sort of summed it up. The whole back three from France I thought was a bit off to begin with. I don't know if that was about trying to match up Switzerland or what they were doing there, but I was pretty disappointed with Longley, to be honest. I know Seferovic is really good in the air, but he's just got to do better in that scenario. And I think as well from the point that when we look back to the World Cup, it was Umtiti and Varane who were the two centre-backs, and they were really good together. And then Kimpembe's kind of come in as that left footer on the left side, even though, Longley is left-footed as well, I believe. And I think last night was a real opportunity for him to say, I play for Barcelona, I can get in this French team. But I just think he failed. And the fact that he was subbed off at halftime as well, I think really summed up. I just don't think we'll see him starting for Spain, France anytime soon.
Do you think that Deschamps look back at that as a mistake, starting with the back three in hindsight? Because, of course, it would feel like he was forced into it with the absence of Lucas Hernandez and Luca Digne to play left back, and so he elected to go with Adrien Rabiot as the left wing back. But like he did in the second half, where France were a lot better, it could have done that in a back four. And it seemed as though France just lost a bit of control of the game when they matched Switzerland up in that back three.
Yeah, I think I would have preferred them to go in a back four. I think players like Ferland Mendy and Theo Hernandez as well, who didn't make the cut, were probably furious the fact that they weren't part of the team as well, given the opportunity. And obviously injuries happen in these tournaments, but I think it was one of them where it was an experiment at the wrong time. I don't know if there's maybe a bit of they were trying to match up Switzerland. Maybe they underestimated Switzerland and they thought, they've got enough up front. They can change defensively a wee bit, but I just don't think it worked out really well for them at all. I think injuries do play a big part in that, of course, but it just didn't work out at all, in my opinion.
And Switzerland had the chance to kill this game off with that penalty. Ricardo Rodriguez seen his penalty saved by Hugo Lloris. And Amy, that's when the pendulum kind of just started to swing. It was one of those moments where it seemed to go that the entire game was changing in France's tide, and that paid off with the goal from Karim Benzema, which I don't think has left my head since. It was just absolutely gorgeous. What can you say about that touch and finish?
There's just quite a lot to, like you say, dissect there in that little bit. So the penalty, it does change everything. I think it was a really poor penalty to start with. You've obviously got to give credit to Lloris, but it's at a decent height. He's not really picked a corner, and it's all around. It's not the the execution that you'd really be looking for, like you say, because I think if that goes in, then I do think that the game's then done. Although in the other game, you know, we could easily have said that at 3-1 with 84 minutes on the clock. But then, like you say, the pendulum sort of swings. But it was only for such a brief spell, you know, and we can look at it as a whole. This was the World Champions on show here. They really only turned up for maybe that 20-minute spell, and it wasn't what was required. I think they perhaps definitely did underestimate Switzerland. And again, that I think that's no real fault of their own in that sense, because I think we all did. You know, it was not an impressive group stage from them, not at all. There wasn't really anything that you could go, wow, there's maybe a slight chance here. No, it was all France. So we thought. So there was a little bit of, you can't really say naivety from France, because they should be able to, you know, understand their opponent, but I don't think the respect to Switzerland was given, and I think that was certainly proven. But to touch on that goal from Benzema, you know, I think there's a few people coming in and saying that first touch wasn't meant. That is a world-class striker with a world-class first touch and a world-class finish. It's just beautiful. You know, you could watch that on repeat day after day, because that is stunning, the technique. And I think we touched on it before, and I think it's pretty well known now that it's that, you know, addition and re-emergence of Benzema into this France side. It just looked like that was the extra ingredient, you know, not that they needed, that we didn't think anyway, that they needed anything else after that World Cup winning side. This was just like that extra little edge, like, wow, you can bring in this world-class, still widely underrated world-class striker, because he's not given the credit he deserves, and perhaps that maybe is because of his lack of international football over the years, but it's he's never, you know, going to get given the credit that he should be. But that is an absolutely terrific goal, and it is one that I think we will be talking about for a long time.
Yeah, my dad always shows me, it's one of his favourite goals, that Dennis Bergkamp sort of flick around the corner against Newcastle.
That was so meant as well.
That was definitely meant. And I texted him being like, I think there's an argument that touch is better than that one you love. He wasn't watching the game, so he was like, I'll need to dig it out, because he wasn't having that. He loves that goal. But two players who, maybe if you saw that goal in isolation, you might think, oh, was that fluky? But if you know either of those players, if you watch them, Bergkamp or Benzema, you'd know that the way they play football, that was 100% meant. And Struan, Amy makes a point there about Karim Benzema kind of being the missing piece of the puzzle. But do you think there's an argument that his inclusion's been a detriment to France over this tournament? Perhaps. I mean, Olivier Giroud was sort of laughed at for the fact that he didn't even manage a shot on target back in that World Cup win in France, in Russia in 2018. But he seemed to get the best out of the team as a whole, whereas Karim Benzema is a goal scorer in his own right. And perhaps we've seen the likes of Kylian Mbappe suffer because you've got another star in that forward line.
Yeah, I was just about to make the point there, but possibly that's the reason Mbappe hasn't had quite as good a Euros as he had the World Cup, because of the target man. I remember Eden Hazard saying when he was at Chelsea that Giroud was one of his favourite players to play with, because he was such a good target man. He gave him so many opportunities. And I think he did that as well with Mbappe. You know, he didn't have any goals at the World Cup, but Mbappe did. And I think another player is Griezmann. You know, I think Griezmann has that sort of freedom role in that France team where he can just sort of go wherever he likes. You know, he's always in that team. He's the mainstay, basically. And I think having Giroud possibly allows him and Mbappe more freedom to go forward, especially when you've got the likes of Pogba, Kante. In the World Cup, it was Matuidi rather than Rabiot or Tolisso, who can also come back and just sort of sit deep. But I think with Benzema, you know, we've seen he's now on penalties. That was probably it's not really a big change, but it's probably a slight change to the team to have somebody come back in and all of a sudden they're taking them. I believe Griezmann was on them during the World Cup, so there's possibly an element of that. It's hard to say it's detriment to the team, because Benzema's so good. We saw it's 4 goals, I believe, was it, in the tournament? The 2 against Portugal, and then was it 2 last night as well? The finish is absolutely amazing. You know, Pogba scored a really good goal, but I prefer the Benzema goal. I just think it's so nice. You know, the touch and the finish on his weak foot as well, just to add that into there. The positioning for the second goal that he gets, the rebound from Griezmann's. I just think he's such a good addition to that team. And I don't support France, but when I saw he was called back to the team, I got really excited, because I just thought that team is just so good up front. To have a player of Benzema's caliber coming back into the side, I think is massive. But I think at the same time, Giroud also does bring a lot to that team. So I think it's quite hard to say whether they are worse overall with Benzema rather than Giroud, or maybe it's just the same, possibly some changes to defence we've previously spoken about Umtiti's no longer part of the defence. It's been a sort of mix-up between Kimpembe, and they've just not quite looked as solid at the back, and as well the injuries that have been all over that team.
And but like Sean alluded to there, Amy, there wasn't just that one special goal, because Paul Pogba's absolute curler into that top right-hand corner was just a joy to watch. And he's been a joy to watch this tournament. I mean, Michael Cox on Twitter made the point last night that he's by far been the player of the tournament. He won't win it now, because I don't think you can win it when you go to the last 16. I think it's got to be a quarterfinals at minimum. But he really has been so enjoyable to watch at this tournament, and it makes you almost kind of sad that a player of this talent hasn't been flourishing at club level over the prime years of his career, really.
I think you should really go strong on that one, but it's Paul Pogba is a world-class player, and that's not just a revelation from this tournament, but it's just been, he has really epitomised his world-class status, because he's been absolutely phenomenal, and again, it's just that frustration then that comes along, because why can he not do it at club level? And I don't understand, is that obviously it totally and utterly has a huge part to play that you're playing alongside N'Golo Kante. He is just the coolest footballer in the world, and the calmest, and he's just everything, and allows Pogba to be that more creative. But I don't know, something's just not clicking at Man United, and it's not something new, because there's just a missing link somehow. I don't know if his head's not in it as much, his heart's not in it. He certainly looks a lot happier when he's playing for France. He's got that free flowing sort of almost buzzing, a little bit of happiness about him. He almost has that little boy within him. I'm getting to represent my country, and you can really see it coming through, and that's a joy to see, because it is what you want to see. But it is frustrating. It really is, because like you say, it's arguably one of his most consistent tournaments. I think there's been a few that he's been in and around. I think he's always kind of kicking around that team of the tournament sort of thing. But I think this one he's really stood out, and it's not the fact that nobody else has really performed, because there's been good performers throughout the tournament, but he's just really stood out. And I think if you asked anybody, they would really go, "Oh, Pogba," and that's tough in a France side that is overflowing with talent. And I think Struan made a really good point there as well. And it's quite ironic, the fact that Struan Garvey admitting he doesn't support a team, but it's everybody has sort of got behind France here, because they're just so enjoyable to watch. I don't understand how anyone couldn't want to watch this, because you want to watch the best players in the world, and you want to watch creative attacking football, and that is what they offer. But last night the defensive frailties were just so on show. The whole Aymeric Laporte omission and almost like refusal to almost play him is astounding to me. This is again a top class footballer, who again I think is a better option than some who have been making appearances this tournament. But it's just it's too reliant on the attacking, even in the midfield. But it's just, I think it's still quite a little bit sad. I think I was backing France, like Struan says, and it was a tough one to see. I think it was a surprise more than anything, of course.
Yeah, when you're talking about those, the attacking is obviously the strength of this team. I thought with Benzema there, Deschamps seemed to sort of just go, "You guys express yourself." And I think that works to an extent, but when you don't have sort of definitive attacking build-up, teams are too well coached these days and sort of tactically astute that they will be able to nullify those threats, and they did. I mean, obviously, yeah, France had that spell and they scored some amazing goals, but I think that we saw it with Holland as well. When you just try and sort of play through your key players and that's your only tactic, then you are going to get found out. And without that sort of definitive plan that they had with the likes of Giroud up front, I think it's ended up actually biting France. And of course, they're now out the tournament. But Struan, you comment on Paul Pogba, then you watch Manchester United every week. And you said in our group chat last night that Paul Pogba probably just had his best season for Man United, and yet still this was another level from the French midfielder at the tournament.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to pinpoint how Pogba is so much better for France than he is for United. And I think we can look back to Juventus as well, when he was in his early 20s and he was one of the best young players in world football. I think he won the Golden Boy award as well. He was absolutely phenomenal. But I always think to his Man United career, the two occasions where I think he's been at his best were when Solskjaer first came in and he played in the midfield with Herrera and Matic. And then this past season where he played up towards the left with Fred and McTominay behind him. And I think having that cover just gives him more freedom to express himself and do what he does best, which is pick anybody out on the pitch that he wants with an unbelievable pass. And we see with the French team, he's got Kante beside him who makes anybody look amazing playing beside him. And then he's also got, either going back to the World Cup, there was also Matuidi in that team, and now it's either Rabiot or Tolisso. So I think having that sort of cover in the midfield helps him massively. And as well, of the French defence is levels above what the Manchester United one has been at times. So I think having that freedom to express himself is just massive. If you look back to the Juventus team, he was in the midfield with Pirlo, Marchisio, Vidal, and himself. So kind of playing off that left-hand side, he just had so much freedom. And I think that's where he's at his best. If you tell him you're going to be in a pivot, you're going to be defending, you don't get the best Pogba that you can get. And I think for this French team, we've seen that, how good he can be. The amount of times he's linked the play, he sent unbelievable passes through to Benzema, to Mbappe. There was one he sent last night where I think it was played out to Coman on the left. He hit it with the outside of his foot. Ali McCoist was absolutely buzzing with it at the time. That's mad. That's how I remember it. And it played out to the left. And then I think Coman's pass didn't quite make Giroud in the middle, or whoever it was at the time, and he can just pull the strings in that midfield. He's so talented. I think he probably has been France's best player in this Euros. But again, when we think about him at Manchester United, whenever Manchester United lose, he's probably the first player criticised overall in a season. I think he's far more appreciated for the national team than he is down south. I think he gets a lot more credit for the national team, and I think he is just a better player. It's almost night and day sometimes. I think, how does this guy do this for France and he doesn't do it for Manchester United? £89 million. How is it a totally different player? He is sort of coming into that peak of his career now as well. It's last year of his contract as well. Teams like Juventus, Real Madrid, PSG all after him. It'll be interesting for Pogba, especially after this tournament, where I think a lot more people will, enjoy seeing him play and be questioning why he doesn't do it in Manchester.
Yeah, Clev Tildesley likened him to Tom Brady last night with some of those passes, and I think that was pretty fitting. Some quarterback plays there, certainly from Paul Pogba. I'll stick with you for just now, Struan, and ask you to talk through that Switzerland comeback, because the amount of character they showed against the world champions, they did have the game, they had the chance to kill the game, and they passed it up. And then you see this attacking talent come to life, and to watch that happen but still fight their way back into the game was massively, massively impressive. So who stood out for you in this Switzerland team and an eventual win that's going to go down in history?
I think Granit Xhaka is the first name who I'd come to. He didn't take a penalty in the shootout. His assist at the end for the third goal was incredible. And I think in this game, we've spoken a lot about the French midfield. It's one of the best midfields in the world, obviously. Kante, Pogba, Rabiot. Xhaka was arguably the best midfielder on the pitch last night. He didn't perform the same amount of passes, but I think he did really well. He's another player who in the Premier League gets a lot of stick for Arsenal and possibly isn't quite as appreciated as he possibly could be. But I thought he was absolutely excellent last night. And I think being the captain as well, I remember, I think just at the end of full time, they were round in a circle and he was shouting commands to them. And I thought, he's got it here. He downed a full bottle of Coke as well before the penalty shootout, which I think was quite funny, given that seems to be the theme of this Euros. But I thought he was absolutely excellent. I'm sure in the dressing room as well, he was a really big character. And I think it's quite hard to pick out exact individuals from that performance from Switzerland, because I thought they were all fantastic. If you're 1-0 up against the world champions, you have a penalty to make it 2-0. And if that goes in, France were pretty poor in the first half up until that point. If that goes in, you're 2-0 up, you're away with it, you're winning. And then to suddenly be 3-1 down against, the best team in the world internationally, you're thinking, how do we come back from this? And they did. And I think the whole team just deserves so much credit for it, especially when someone like Xherdan Shaqiri, who possibly is Switzerland's most talented player, actually came off before the comeback as well. I'm sure quite a few people probably doubted they would be able to at that point. But to be able to come back, I think it's just so impressive, really. I was just getting behind the Swiss team. I love watching France play, but at the same time, I really wanted Switzerland to come back because I thought it was just so impressive from them.
And Amy, jumping to the end of the penalty shootout, I feel like everyone seemed to know that Kylian Mbappe was going to miss that penalty. I think everyone had the same sort of collective feeling that, I don't know, after the tournament that he's had so far, where he's failed to score, or just the way that game was going, where he missed a few chances, it just seemed inevitable that penalty wasn't going to go in. And we were hearing afterwards that it was only Luca Digne out of the entire France squad who went to console Kylian Mbappe after that penalty miss. Will there be questions about him and his impact at this tournament, because he is seen as such a talismanic figure for the France national team and he hasn't performed at this tournament? Will questions now be raised towards him and his sort of potential going forward?
I think inevitably they have to be, and that's not saying that I agree with that. But when you have the price tag that Mbappe has, and a player like Mbappe has, then you have to question him. You know, this is I'll bring into the argument, you know, the devil's advocate side of it. Then he is still really young, you know, and that's a nation's expectations riding on your shoulders. But like you say, I think it was, you know, I think the minute it cut to Mbappe that he was taking the 5th penalty, I think we all just knew deep down it was never going to go the way he wanted it to go. There was no confidence really in the strike, even in his walk up. I think he grabbed the ball really late on as well. I just had no confidence in him at all. But I think there will be questions raised, and I think there will probably be a hefty amount of criticism. I think it's really interesting. I've not actually thought about, you know, maybe Benzema being a little bit detrimental, or whatever you want to call it, to this French side, but it does sort of make sense and maybe align to how Mbappe has struggled here. But at the end of the day, this is a world-class player, and that's all I seem to say when we're talking about this French side. But he has failed to really show it on this big stage, and that's where you're going to get judged. You know, this is taking it away a little bit from France, but the whole Messi-Ronaldo debate, no matter what, I still back Messi, but so many people then bring it into the international side, and that'll happen again with Mbappe. You know, he has to do it at club level, but equally he'll have to do it at international level, and that's a massive cross really now against his name at this stage, because like I say, when you have that price tag and you're on the money that he is on, you have to be putting that away. You know, the minute it was a miss, my dad straight away, he was like, well, I've got no sympathy, you know, look at the money that he's on and everything that I've just alluded to there. At the same time, I feel that it was perhaps too much for him, in the sense that he's not had the tournament that he'd expected to have. If he was riding high, you know, and emotions and everything was going so well for him, then absolutely he's the guy that you want to be stepping up. But his confidence is at a low, and that's been evident because the chances that, you know, he maybe would have been taking in 2018 and putting them away, or not even 2018 at the World Cup, any season at PSG for the last few seasons, they'd have been shooing, you know. But he's just failed to find that little clinical edge, and it paid off, and it showed. And I think I feel a little bit disappointment, because again, I feel he's still very young, and you don't want this to have, you know, a detrimental effect on his progression. But at the end of the day, if you're going to be, you know, the next best player in the world and have this price tag and have all of this, you know, praise and everything, you've got to take the criticism as it comes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some comments coming in. Strangely, the doctor saying yesterday's football was delightful. I was sad to see Croatia leave the tournament, but on the other hand, I was extremely happy that France were knocked out. Kevin Graham saying it was a great day. France deserved to go out after Pogba's dance. Down with that sort of thing. Struan, we'll finish off this chat by coming to you. And I just really want to ask you, do you think we're at a sort of crossroads for Didier Deschamps and his time at France? He's been in the press today saying that he doesn't plan on going anywhere, but he's been there since 2012. That's obviously a long time in modern day football. Do you think that if anyone was able to know how to go into a tournament and defend being world champions, it was him. He was captain back in '98 when they won it in 2000, and he's failed to replicate it here. They're out of the last 16. You can imagine that in France, that's not going to go down too well at all, considering the sort of pre-tournament expectations. So do you think his position's in jeopardy, and do you think it's right that France perhaps look to make a change?
Yes and no. I think they've not had a great tournament by their own standards, to be honest. You know, I think even in the group stage there were a few questionable results. Of course, to Hungary 1-1. I think at the time, I think a lot of people would have expected France to have at least won that game. I think as well the fact they won the World Cup 3 years ago. I think it's really difficult to suddenly say this manager doesn't deserve to be there anymore. There's been a lot of talk of Zidane. I think Fabrizio Romano even tweeted last night the fact that that's apparently one of Zidane's dream jobs. Worked with quite a few of the players as well. It's just tough because obviously I don't think anybody would ever want to give up managing this French team. You know, it's so good. There's world-class talent all over the pitch, but at the same time, he may know himself, you know, have I taken this team as far as I can go? The defence possibly isn't as good as it used to be. You know, shipping 3 goals to Switzerland, possibly could have been 4 as well. Of course, the penalty saved in just the 90 minutes. I just can't really see that happening that frequently with this French team in the past, especially even just recently they held Germany to a 1-0 victory. So it's a really tough call. I think he possibly deserves the World Cup. I wouldn't replace him just yet, but then at the same time, maybe he himself thinks, I've done what I can. He's almost done it all, hasn't he? He's won the Euros and the World Cup as a player, the World Cup as a manager, nearly probably expected to win it as a manager this time. He's probably thinking in the back of his mind, I can still do more. I can possibly win back-to-back World Cups. France have so many good young players coming through as well. We've spoken about a few of them who didn't quite make the call into this team. There is possibly that as well, and it's just such a tough decision. I think I'm not French. I'm not French. I don't really have that much of a view on who's going to be the manager of the national team, but I think it's a very tough call.
Yeah, I think there might just be a Zinedine Zidane-shaped shadow while he doesn't have a job, but I think that Didier Deschamps has probably got enough stock in the bank to keep his job for now, certainly. Let's move on to, I fully expected this game to be the first game we spoke about today, but after that thriller with the world champions going out, we had to start with France. But we can move on now to Croatia versus Spain, and to help us do so, would you like to be joined by Sofia Vegas Navarro from Energy Sport. Sofia, how are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm very happy.
I can imagine it must have been your nerves must have been shot yesterday. And let's start off by talking about one of the most bizarre own goals we've seen for a long time. If you can't explain your feelings for that moment.
As I saw that, I was like, I'm so embarrassed. Yeah, I'm gonna turn the TV off now. I couldn't believe it genuinely. Like, as I saw the goal go in, I was like, this is a joke. Where's the hidden camera? This is not happening. How? I mean, I guess Pedri, but how can you not stop that? Like, it's a pass. Oh my God, it was just like...
We were talking about it, Graham Souness, who was on ITV, a Scottish pundit, was saying that he thinks that Pedri was to blame for the own goal, that he overhit his pass. But we were all of the opinion that Unai Simon should do a lot better job of stopping that.
I guess, Pedri could be a bit to blame too, because he could have done things differently. But anyways, the goalkeeper should have stopped that. Like, it was a pass after all, and I don't know. You're the goalkeeper. It's your job.
Look after the goal.
But I must say though that he did redeem himself after, because he had quite like couple good saves after that one that could have made Spain lose the game. So yeah, I forgive you, Unai. Don't worry.
I'm sure he's delighted to hear that. And Stuart, I'll come to you and talk about Spain hitting back. It wasn't too long before the break that they did that, and it was kind of by virtue of just keeping the ball alive in the attacking third. And it's eventually finished off by Pablo Sarabia, who we were talking about as being maybe not one of the star names on this Spain starting lineup, but he's certainly been probably the most potent attacker so far this tournament. You've been impressed by him. Yeah,
I've been really impressed by Sarabia, to be honest. I think possibly he's been their best attacker at the Euros so far. I think he's really good to watch, to be honest. He always looks a threat. I think a lot of people don't really know much about him. Obviously, he's in that PSG team and he's overshadowed by the likes of Mbappe, Neymar, Di Maria. There's a lot of good talent in that team and he's possibly forgotten about, but he's a really talented player. Before he went to PSG in La Liga, he was absolutely excellent. And I think he is possibly one of the best attackers in the Spain team at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And Amy, Spain sort of extended their lead in the second half, both down that right-hand side with goals from Cesar Azpilicueta and Ferran Torres. Again, up against Guardiola, who I think looked really shaky against Scotland. I think I said that during the game, that he was the one weak link in that Croatia side where if we'd been able to exploit, we might have seen more joy throughout that. Sorry to bring it back to Scotland, but I'm still haunted. Was this a case of Spain sort of coming alive and coming to the fore in the second half, or defensively did Croatia kind of throw this one away?
I think Croatia threw this one away, really did. I think, to be honest, neither defence held themselves in glory last night. I think they were both, really, really naive and really, they just didn't look up for it. I think there was a lot of nerves, but the Croatian backline in particular, the both goals that you are referring to, they were so easily avoidable. I think Azpilicueta, what is Azpilicueta doing there anyway, for starters? This is, there's no surprise this is his first international goal for Spain, but to be in that position in the first place, but then to be allowed into that position, and to really, for such just an easy ball to get delivered in, and it's an easy header, he's not missing that. And again, and it just looked a bit for Croatia, and I think that is what we were kind of building on now as Scotland, because there's a lot of now talk coming out yesterday going, oh, can you believe that we thought we could beat Croatia? Well, that's how we thought we could beat Croatia, because we saw the frailties there, and we saw that they were there for the taking at the back, because there's not the confidence, and there was a real nervousness about them. So it was you can, of course, you can give the credit will be given to Spain, but I think a lot has to be questioned off that Croatian back line, because that was not a sturdy one or a confident one at all.
Yeah, and you thought when Spain got that third one that they might just calmly see it out, as we have expected Spain teams of old to do. That wasn't the case, Sophia, and maybe you could talk us through the comeback from Croatia from your perspective, and just how excruciating that must have been to watch.
So I had a friend beside me, and he went in the 76th minute. When that's Spain through, and I went, you just jinxed it, like they're gonna come back. As soon as Croatia scored the second goal, I was like, no, they're scoring the third goal, we're going into extra time. Of course they scored it, because that's the one thing that I would give to Croatia. They have a lot of spirit, and as soon as they had like the goal in, they were like strong. They were like, oh, this is our comeback, we can do it. And let's face it, Modric does carry that team. And then when we came back into extra time for the first like 5 minutes, I don't know what Spain was doing. They were so lost. I don't know what they were thinking. I was like, oh, that's us out. That's us out. There's such an inconsistent team, I would say. So they can be like play so good for strong 10 minutes, but suddenly something happens, and for the following 10 they're lost. They do bad passes. They seem to like lose connection, so that's a bit frustrating. But as soon as Morata finally scored, thank god, thank god, what a goal though, I will give it to him. And I was like, oh, okay, here's the confidence back. I think we've got it now. I think we have a grasp. And then was it Oyarzabal who scored the fifth one? Yeah, right. And I was like, oh, okay, finally we can breathe. But once again, I went like, let's not say anything. They come back from a 2-lead goal, so I must shut up.
How have people reacted to Alvaro Morata, that goal? Because it was quite the sort of narrative there, the fact that he's missed so many chances, and he seems like he's been too blunt for the Spain side. But for him to score what was really the decisive goal in this game, and such a good goal as well, it takes him, he's now Spain's joint top goal scorer in Euros history alongside Fernando Torres. And his goal return for Spain isn't too far off, one in every 2 games. So is he harshly treated? And what was the reaction to that goal?
I don't know if he's harshly treated. I saw a press conference, I think it was 2 days ago, where he went that he couldn't sleep after the Sweden game, and that he didn't sleep after the Poland game because he knew he was doing his job badly. And I was like, if you're looking for me to feel bad for you, you're not gonna find anything, because it's your job. Like, he's given so many chances, and somehow he manages to, I don't know. I think I said it the last time I was here. I don't know if he gets nervous, if the expectations people have of him just like are too much. But definitely good goal, but doesn't redeem, like, it's your job. Thank you for scoring. Yes, but you're there for that. So no, I mean, he still has to do more for me to actually think, oh, you deserve to be there. Because for me right now, there are other strikers that could do a better job where Morata is right now, like Iago Aspas, for example. I don't know why he wasn't called.
Interesting. And Struan, Sophia mentioned the influence that Luka Modric can have on this Croatia side, but he seemed sort of marked out this game by Sergio Busquets, who must be so important to the Spain side now, especially the absence of Sergio Ramos, as a real leader. I think the way he sort of dictated this game showed his class that we've probably still underappreciated after all these years at the top of both club and international football. Just how big is he for Spain going forward in this tournament as well?
No, definitely.
think-
It's oh, sorry. I don't know if it was for me or for you. Sorry.
Go, Sophia.
Sorry. It's his last tournament also, so I think he really wants to say like, oh, I'm here, I'm leaving my mark, I'm leaving like my footsteps. I think he did a great job yesterday. He's the one who knows Spain team the best and how to play to its best ability, I guess. Also, he's in the middle of the pitch, so he can direct the game a bit. And he has good vision. Like, he knows where to pass. His back passes are amazing. I was really shocked yesterday. I really enjoy seeing him, and finally him like being given the importance he actually does have within the team. So yeah, that's my comment. Sorry for interrupting.
Do you have anything that you want to add about Sergio Busquets, Struan?
I think that sums up perfectly. I think Busquets is one of the, if not the best holding midfielder in world football. I think he's so underappreciated, of course, in the Barcelona, the Spain teams in the past. Like Iniesta and Xavi obviously get a lot of the praise. I think Busquets is so important in these. And I felt a bit unlucky. I think he tested positive for COVID just before the tournament. And I think that's how Rodri started the first couple of games. And Rodri's really good as well. But I just think Busquets is just unbelievable, to be honest. And I think he's a really experienced head in a team who have lost quite a few leaders in recent years. So I think he's just so important to that team. And it's just a joy to watch, really, as well. The way he can just... We saw how important Modric was against Scotland. He just ran the show, and Busquets can really just control him. I think just shows how talented Busquets is. And of course, the two of them will have met quite a lot in club football recently as well, Real Madrid and Barcelona.
And Amy, we spoke about Laporte earlier in the show, but he can't seem to get a settled partner next to him. And that's it's not game to game, it's during games. I mean, Sophia will tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the last two games that mid-game, for no reason other than a tactical switch, he's swapped Eric Garcia for Pau Torres mid-game. What's that going to do to a defensive line when you're swapping your centre-half mid-game? I mean, that doesn't seem like a sort of cohesive defensive strategy.
It's not at all, and I can kind of reflect it with club football, with Celtic. It's so important for consistency in that back line. And it's just really, it's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, that both defensive partnerships or back threes, whatever it really was, they both looked so frail, and they were just really there for the taking, to be quite blunt. It's so crucial to have that spine of the team, and I just think Spain are really struggling to really find that. But then again, I think you could almost say that throughout the whole breadth of the pitch. I think, again, that really epitomises why Sergio Busquets is so crucial, because I think this whole Spanish side as a team and as a nation are actually really struggling to move on from the golden generation. Like we were talking about how hard it is to actually see it and to not see the dominance of Spain. But I think the players themselves are almost carrying quite a lot, that it's living up to the expectations of the amazing predecessors. And it's almost like, can we hit that barrier? And they're not hitting it yet. And it's just, I don't know, there's a lot of angst, because I think something that was so synonymous with that golden generation side of Spain was that, they were so calm, cool, calm and collective off the ball. Lost possession, and it was never a worry. Everything was just, it's okay, we'll get it back, and everything was so chill. Spain looked like scared little boys when they're out of possession right now, and it's frantic to get the ball back, and there's no calmness. Everything's just it's just quite nervy, and it's quite jerky, and it's quite jumpy, and nothing is clicking. They just need 5 minutes or so just to chill. And I think that's the presence of Busquets definitely allows that, more than if he wasn't there, what it would be. But it's still not enough, and at this level, and as the tournament progresses and as Spain progress, they'll come against sides who will attack on that, and I say attack, not creatively attacking. I just mean they're going to pounce on that, and they'll just keep the ball, and they'll tire Spain out, because they just it's like a dog really wanting to chase back their ball sort of thing. Everything, it's too fast paced. There's just no cohesion, and sitting back, getting back into the formation and just really, right, that there'll be a flowy attack, but we just got to deal with it. It's if they're not on the front foot, they really do look scared. And that's something that they really need to improve on, or they won't progress in these competitions, and they certainly won't put in a decent performance against a top side.
Yeah, Sophia, Amy's talking there about being stuck in the sort of golden generation, and I guess there's a beacon of light that gives hope for the one after that, and it's sort of written into your contract every time I ask you to come on anything. You get a wee segment to talk about Pedri, and it was a performance yesterday that was way beyond his years. You wouldn't know that based on his influence in the game yesterday. He was only 18 years old, so have at it, Pedri.
I think Pedri is going to be very important. If he plays like he played yesterday, it's his vision of the game, like his passes, I think I just enjoyed watching him yesterday so much. Like, he did miss some passes. He did juggle up his feet a bit, but he I would say he was the man of the match yesterday for me. And that's not me being I love him, but not like completely unbiased. He played for 18 years old that he turned literally last December. He was amazing yesterday. It's just his passing, his crosses, the way he can get the ball inside the box. It's just like, that's the future of Spain right there. He's the one, I guess, maybe when Busquets leaves and like there's no real roots to like make a Spanish team consistent, he's maybe the one who will bring that consistency back, I guess. But I agree with Amy there. The defensive line they're scared. Yesterday, I think the player who showed it the most was Pau Torres. Like, he was scared of a counterattack. He couldn't manage it. Like, as soon as as soon as the ball came back, he didn't know what to do. Like, he was just scared. And that for me were how the goals, the two equalizer goals came. Like, they just didn't know how to stop it. They're very, very weak at the back, and that's something they have to work on if they want to continue in the Euros or just like bring consistency back.
And it's funny that having scored 10 goals in the last two games, we're still talking about all these question marks around this Spain side, and we know they'll play Switzerland the next round, and that's probably a game that might suit Spain more, being able to hold on to more of the ball than they would against maybe France if that had been the game. So what's the feeling, Sophia? Do you think that based on what we've seen in the last two games that Spain can make a run at this tournament, or do you think those defensive frailties will prove too much?
I don't know. You see, yesterday seeing the France-Switzerland game, I was like, actually, Switzerland have a pretty good team. I was very shocked. I thought their performance yesterday was amazing. Like, my respects to Switzerland. Congratulations. I still think maybe if Spain plays consistently well throughout the game, they can win it. But if they are very inconsistent, Switzerland have it. Because I felt like Switzerland was very consistent yesterday throughout the French game. So I think it's a question of how they're going into the pitch. Are they confident? Because I feel like confidence is a big thing in the Spanish team. Because, for example, Pau Torres, he wasn't confident. That's how the goals came in. But if you're Pedri, Busquets, if they're confident, they can see the game, they can make the passes, and that's how they bring the consistency to the actual 90 minutes of the game. So let's see how the pep talk of Luis Enrique is before the game. I hope it's very good, because if they go in and they're lost, they don't have a connection, that's Spain gone. Because that's something I will give to Switzerland. Watching the game yesterday, they know how to play, they know how to be consistent. They actually fight till the last minute. It was a joy. Yesterday was a great day to watch football, not going to lie.
Yeah, it was one of those days that just makes you fall in love with football all over again, I think. And it sort of reminds us all about why we love this sport and why it's It's so fun to watch. Amy, before we move on from this one, I do want to come to you because there was a name on everyone's lips yesterday, and they weren't on the pitch, but instead in the commentary booth, and that was Emma Hayes. And I want to come to you because we often talk about not talking about women in football as women in football, just talking about them as a person in football. And it seemed to me yesterday that the conversation around Emma Hayes wasn't she's doing well for a female co-commentator, as the fact that she is one of the best co-commentators, if not the best co-commentator at this Euros in terms of our UK coverage, and the sort of tactical insights she was bringing, and the way that she break things down was so easy to understand and so enjoyable to listen to. So I'd just like to hear your thoughts on her sort of performance at these Euros.
Absolutely. It's I think most people know, obviously, now we do commentary together. So it is a real interest for us to really almost as well understand how we can improve. But it's if you want a lesson on how to be the co-commentator, then that is where you turn to. Emma Hayes was absolutely outstanding, and she has been outstanding throughout this tournament. I think was our first game perhaps the Poland game, or if it wasn't, that was the game that really everybody started to talk about her. And the reason I think as well that we touched upon it, there was an article in The Athletic by Simon Hughes, and it was all about what makes a co-commentator, and it's offering that analysis. And it's the best co-commentators are obviously or do have experience in the game themselves, and they can draw it to their own personal, experiences. But Emma Hayes is just offering so much in such a short space of time, and it's not just what's happening on the ball. Like there was yesterday, and there was just one that it's just coming to my mind, and I don't even think Cesar Azpilicueta was actually even in the picture, but she was talking about a run that he was making, and that is just, it's a vision. And co-commentating is hard right now. Commentating right now is hard because it's not the same. You're not in the stadium and really taking in the whole atmosphere, so you can't draw on that either. But she is absolutely outstanding, and it's fantastic to see the praise that she is getting, because as well, I think it makes it that little bit easier really to actually just appreciate how good she is when you look at the others that are out there. And we're not going to name names, but I think everybody knows themselves that there are some extremely poor co-commentators out there who do not put in their research. And I think there's we're talking about the arrogance perhaps of France. I think there's some arrogance amongst commentators and co-commentators, local co-commentators, that they don't put in the research. And it's this glorified, I'm an ex-football player, I'm an ex-internationalist, I'll be able to go and talk about a game. Some come out with ridiculous statements. There's a goalkeeper that's been number one at AC Milan since he was 16, but it's good that he's bursting onto the scene right now.
He looks a player.
He looks a player, by the way. Whew, keep an eye on him. It's just basic stuff, so it's fantastic to see or listen to a real expert, an expert in the game. And again, and I'll touch on, I think it offers that little bit of difference because I know many people here are a big fan of Alan McCoist. Alan McCoist, I think he has that, you just think you're sitting in the pub with him. And he offers expertise as well, he really does, and he breaks down the game. But it's that familiarity, and it's just like, he's just talking the way that he'd be talking with us, and you just feel he is enjoying the game. And there's no doubt Emma Hayes is enjoying the game, but she's offering things that I didn't actually think of that. And it's now I'm going to look out for, Azpilicueta's run or whatnot. And I just think it's just been a real shining light probably in this tournament, just to have a real go-to co-commentator that knows their stuff, because who knew that it'd be so difficult to do a little bit of research for a football game.
Yeah, so refreshing to hear actual tactical analysis of the game we're watching, which I don't know if it's a very high bar, but Emma Hayes has absolutely smashed it this tournament, and I hope she gets other games on ITV before the tournament ends, because it'd be great to hear her. Sophia, before I let you go, we have to ask your prediction for England-Germany later on, and remember where you are.
I think Germany will win. I think it'll be a 3-1. I think it'll be. Yeah, I think England will score one. I think it'll be 1-1 for a while, but then Germany will score and England will be like, oh, they just scored. So no confidence lost, and that's when Germany will just push back and be like 3-1, and that's it. It's done.
Correct answer. It's great chatting to you, Sophia. Best luck to Spain for the rest of the tournament. Do you want to let people know where they can find you on social media and stuff like that if they'd like to give you a follow?
So I think my Twitter account is Sophie Villegas1. Correct?
Well done.
Finally, I've learned it. Thank you.
It was great talking to you, and we
you
look
for
forward
having
to
me.
speaking to you again soon.
Bye.
See you. Bye-bye. So we better talk about that England game then. Struan, I'll come to you and ask you, try to take all sort of emotion and bias out of this. Can you pick a favourite? Sorry, is there a clear favourite heading into this game?
I'm struggling to actually think who is the favourite. You know, on paper, both teams are really strong all over the pitch. You know, they both had pretty good groups. I think Germany were, of course, in the group of death with France and Portugal. England's group was slightly easier, although quite a tough group given how the teams have performed afterwards. But I think I think Germany possibly. I think they've got far more experience in that team. You know, some of those players are still part of the 2014 World Cup winning team. They tend to have gone far in that. I think the England team is still a much younger team. I think Kyle Walker is the oldest player in that squad at 31 or something. So I think they're still a much younger, inexperienced squad overall. So I think I'd probably give the edge to Germany in that sense. But man for man, I think it's really tough to call, to be honest. I think for managerial wise, I think Joachim Low is possibly a better tactician. Well, he is.
Yeah, he is. I'm not
he is, yeah.
Gareth Southgate. Amy, there's rumours today that there could be some defensive injuries for Germany. Robin Gosens and Antonio Rudiger are kind of well, I say injuries, I believe they're ill. They've got flu-like symptoms, but not those flu-like symptoms. How big a miss could they be for Germany, particularly Gosens, who kind of been a revelation at this tournament for people who perhaps aren't too versed in what a good side Atalanta are?
It's that'll be a massive blow, you know, and I'd be extremely worried if that is the case. Loads of us are in Gosens fan club, and have been for quite some time. But like you say, if you didn't know who he was, if you weren't familiar with his ability, then my God, what an introduction you've got in this tournament, because I think he's been outstanding. You know, talking about Paul Pogba, but he is right up there as well. It's just almost the defenders never really get the plaudits or that same sort of praise that any sort of attacking player out there would. But it's going to be a massive miss if he and Rudiger as well, because Rudiger has that experience, you know, with playing in Chelsea and playing against these players week in, week out, or playing with them week in, week out. So it's all those little bits that really could swing the pendulum either way, but they would be massive misses. And kind of like Struan, it's a tough one. I'm nervous if England do it. It's and I think just these injury worries are really just playing on my mind, because I really just feel that then England will just have this almost like little kick up the backside, that this is an opportunity they can't miss. There's no denying that English and the English media are making so much more of this fixture than the Germans. And I read a great article, I think it was Jurgen Klinsmann, the other day, and he was like, you know, that it's not getting the same sort of the way that the English hang on and cling on to the rivalry, and you know, and cling on to 66. It's sickening. You know, we can talk about clinging on to absolutely anything and clinging on to Lampard's ghost goal, but it's I think that the English, they've built it up more than the Germans, and I think I'm hoping that will maybe play a part of it. And I just have to hope that the class of the Germans come through, because I think a lot perhaps wrote the Germans off at the start of this tournament. As Struan said, obviously they were meant to be in the group of hell. I do actually think maybe we were in the group of hell, but it's I think they've actually probably surpassed some people's expectations, and I know that's crazy to say when they were only the world champions in 2014, but I think that's the perception that was really taken across the board. And I think that there's almost, again, and well, there is an English arrogance that they can go out and do this, but England have been so far off the mark, you know, this tournament, and not just against Scotland. The talent that they have up top, it's not getting used properly, or they're not showing it properly. You know, Phil Foden has been, I don't know how critical I can be, but he's been absolutely nowhere. You know, if he wants to dye his hair every week, then go for it, because it's no working, pal. But it's an odd one. I think again, Klinsmann said that perhaps the biggest threat in Germany would be if Jadon Sancho played, because they know that the threat that he poses. And I'll be honest, I agree with him there. I don't understand the hatred almost to play Sancho. Gareth got a really long relationship with Jadon Sancho. I think they first met, I think it was under 15s, perhaps, could be wrong, but it's been a long time that they have been in some sort of partnership and relationship. So I don't know. I don't think he's got his tactics right, and I think again, I'm hoping that it shows that Lowe has got that expertise and can knock England out tonight.
And Struan, Amy's talking there about the sort of plethora of attacking talent that England have, but according to The Athletic, there will be no Jack Grealish, Mason Mount, Phil Foden or Jadon Sancho in the starting lineup tonight. It's reported that they're going to a 3-4-3, and it'll be Raheem Sterling, Harry Kane and Bukayo Saka, who I now know his entire school exam history thanks to multiple features on my TV these last few weeks. Do you think that's a smart move? Is Bukayo Saka the one who can be the real X factor in this game?
I should start by saying I really like Saka. I think he's a really talented player. He's possibly the most talented English youngster in the Premier League at the moment. But at the same time, I find it baffling that Jadon Sancho hasn't been used in this tournament much for England at all, let alone this game where he literally plays in the Bundesliga. He's teammates with Mats Hummels, who he's possibly going to be coming up against a few times in this game. I think this is a fixture that's made for him, and I just can't believe he'll probably get 15 minutes off the bench at the end or something like that. I think it is tough to call. Of course, Sterling's been England's best attacker this tournament. He deserves to start. He scored both of their goals. Kane's the captain, one of the best strikers in the world. He's going to start as well. And I think Saka has impressed, but I think it's just a really tough call. They seem to be going man for man if it is going to be a 3-4-3 to match up to what Germany play, but I think it's a really tough call. Another one, Jack Grealish, who I think a lot of people say should be starting week in, week out for England because he is so talented. He's been tipped with a £100 million move to Manchester City. So, the talent's there. I think it's just tough whatever Gareth Southgate does, to be honest. He's got such good attackers, but at the same time, they've not really been doing it in the opening group games. That possibly is why Foden has been dropped. I think Mount also is tipped to be dropped tonight as well. I'm not sure if he's still isolating or what the whole story with him is at the moment, but yeah, it's a really big call, especially given how young Saka is. He's had quite a few man of the match performances as well for England, so he's obviously impressed in training. Worth a shot, to be honest. It'd be really interesting to see how they match up today, especially if Germany are going to be missing two of their defenders, two really good defenders.
And just in the very limited time we have left, I'll ask you both to quickly touch on Sweden, Ukraine, and just sort of ask you, what players do you think might light up Hampden Park this afternoon? There's they've both got sort of exciting squads without being too consistent so far at this tournament. So, Amy, is there anyone who you think could be a star in Glasgow this evening?
Mikael Lustig, because he absolutely loves Hampden Park.
I had to do that, didn't you?
I just, it's so great he's came home. No, I'm delighted to see him back, and I think this is going to be a really, really exciting game. I really do. I like that it's two. I don't really know. It's hard to say.
Maybe, or yeah.
What was that? Sorry.
Unfancied. They're not tournament
favourites.
Unfancied.
Yeah. Go with unfancied, yeah. And I just like that openness. It's great to see still in a knockout phase, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this the Swedish side again, because I think they've played really, really well this tournament. They've been exciting, and they've played quite freely. I don't know how much was perhaps expected of them. I was listening to Johan Mjällby last week actually, and he was saying that there is actually quite a big expectation of Sweden around this side, and I was like, I'm quite surprised at that, because on paper it's probably not been their strongest side in a few years, but apparently they really quite fancy themselves perhaps getting out the group stages, and the expectation was there to reach the knockout phase. So it's great, their attacking strengths are there, and I think it's going to be a really, really, really exciting game, and I'm buzzing that it's actually at Hampden, because I'm hoping that obviously there'll be a few Scottish fans there getting to see a real good open game of football. Yeah,
hopefully. Struan, you've got 5 seconds to give me a name.
Lindelof, Isak, Forsberg, Yarmolenko, Zinchenko.
Isak,
he's amazing. Isak's amazing.
Alexander Isak, that would be my guess too. Struan, thank you very much for joining us. It's been great chatting to you, and thank you as well to Sofia Viegas Navarro for talking us through that Spain side. Amy, before I let you go, please let us know about your upcoming guest on Soccer Supernova. It's one that I'm very, very excited about.
Yes, I think it's going out tonight. I do think it is going to go out tonight, and it's with Semra Hunter. So I actually missed the first 45 the France game last night because we were too busy dissecting what had just unfolded before us. So she works for La Liga TV. She is absolutely she's outstanding, to be honest, and it was a really, really good chat with her. And yeah, you better tune in because you do like to bore us with your Spanish knowledge, your La Liga knowledge. So I spoke to a real expert. There you go, we'll put it out at 2 this afternoon. Thank you,
There we go. Paul jumping into the chat there to let us know. And yeah, 2 very talented broadcasters talking to each other will be a good time for everyone to watch. So I suggest everyone jumps on that. So thank you, Amy, for joining us as well. And thank you to everyone for watching this episode of the State of the Euros. We'll be back tomorrow to talk through tonight's games, hoping that the results go the way we want them to. But until then, auf Wiedersehen.